Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is the third module of continuing education related to school HACCP and school food safety. In this module, we will discuss how to safely handle food for field trips and transport. This module will provide 1 hour of continuing education for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction in the School Nutrition Key Area of Operations area of General Food Safety. Much of the content in this module comes from the North Carolina Department of Instruction. Their resources include a handout, PowerPoint, and report for food safety for field trips, and can be found on their child nutrition website at the link shown here. We have supplemented this information with our own to create this module. We hope this will be a comprehensive guide for you on food safety for field trips and food transport. Use it for trips or programs where food is transported out of the kitchen, such as with the Summer Nutrition Program. Let's get started. The first thing to highlight when it comes to field trips or transporting food outside of the kitchen is the importance of temperature control. When we take foods out of an environment we can control, like a school kitchen, it becomes much more challenging to control the temperature. Indoors, we have a system to create an ambient or room temperature in the 60 to 70 degree Fahrenheit range. When we put food onto a school bus, go somewhere, take it off the bus, and have a teacher or parent volunteer carry it to another location, for example, we lose control of the temperature. The temperature of the food impacts how quickly bacteria can grow. If we have a small bit of contamination, it can grow into a larger problem over time if we have the right time and temperature combination. In child nutrition, most foods are not kept in the temperature danger zone. Food is held below 41 degrees Fahrenheit or above 135 degrees Fahrenheit, or at least not held between 41 and 135 for very long. Bacteria will grow rapidly in this range and can grow to problematic levels compared to if it was refrigerated. Research tells us a little bit about student lunches in general. One study done a few years ago on sack lunches prepared by the parents found that student lunches were not well managed from a food safety standpoint. 90% were found to be at unsafe temperatures. The study was done using a national survey looking at foods and measuring temperature. We know that leaving food out in the temperature danger zone is fine if the food is eaten or thrown away within 4 hours. The Food Code refers to this as using time as a public health control, or TILT, time in lieu of temperature. We lose control of time and temperature when kids are eating on a field trip. It is also important to think about how and where food is stored when it's being transported. If you were to leave food that was previously refrigerated in a car trunk or in direct sunlight in an unair-conditioned bus, for example, you'll find foods will reach the temperature danger zone within 10 minutes of sunlight exposure. How much sunlight and how hot it is can impact the food's temperature, causing it to rise into the 90s in less than an hour. Not managing the temperature during food storage and transport will lead to problematic situations very quickly. An event in the news recently, and an example of the importance of refrigeration in certain types of foods, is the Sabra brand hummus recall. The company recalled 30,000 cases of a specific lot of hummus due to Listeria monocytogenes contamination. Hummus is one of the foods that we worry about when it comes to time and temperature control. Our 4-hour guideline for getting food out of the danger zone was developed based on how quickly Listeria can grow. We use this example also because hummus is a food many children like to eat, often for lunch. We don't typically think of hummus as a food that facilitates the growth of harmful bacteria or that is associated with foodborne illness. It absolutely is, and the recent recall highlights this fact. In this situation, we didn't see any illnesses, but could envision that a little bit of Listeria in that hummus, if held at the wrong temperature on a field trip, could grow to dangerous levels in a short amount of time. It is important to refrigerate this product and other cooked food products that have been cooked, chilled, and refrigerated. We mentioned at the start of this module that the North Carolina Department of Instruction, NCDPI, has helpful information for North Carolina public schools. This information can be found on their website under Nutrition. Here are their resources on field trip safety. One of their documents highlighted here is the handout Food Safety on Field Trips. It is useful for teachers taking school trips as well as for school food service employees preparing meals for these trips. It also looks at partnerships. Everyone involved in managing food safety on field trips, including the school nutrition director, cafeteria staff, and teachers, should know and understand the information in this handout. It explains why temperature control and hand washing in areas where food will be served really matter. You should provide a copy of this handout to whoever is transporting meals. Understanding that handling food for transport and trips involves a partnership is key. Food service staff must communicate with those transporting the food to make sure that they have all of the information they need to manage the transport. They may need to transport food in a cooler with ice or cold packs. They must make sure the lid is kept closed and monitor the temperature over time, especially if they were planning to serve the food after 4 hours. Dr. Ben Chapman and colleagues recently conducted a study on North Carolina's summer nutrition program. The study focused on the ability for those who received food to wash their hands, the temperatures and types of foods that were transported to the sites, and where they were distributed. Although the data is still being analyzed, preliminary results show that in general, hand washing, food transport, and food distribution are done very well in terms of food safety. Investigators expected things to be good with little problems and were surprised how well the program was managed overall. Research showed that there were some situations where hand washing facilities were not available. For the most part, foods were distributed by individuals. Bare hand contact did not usually occur, but in a few instances, individuals were taking aggregated food that was ready to eat and were handling those by hand, such as strawberries and apples. In 1 or 2 isolated instances, an individual was handling sandwiches with bare hands. Temperature was monitored and controlled very well overall. In some situations, though, food that was distributed and sat out for a few hours was well into the temperature danger zone by the time researchers were able to check the food's temperature. What they took away from the project was that food safety in North Carolina's summer nutrition program was managed well, but not perfectly. Why is food safety a concern? Why do we worry about temperatures on a field trip? We mentioned before that it is difficult to control food temperatures in a food transport situation. Temperature fluctuation can occur quite a bit, and bacteria can grow quickly between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So what does that mean exactly? Let's take a look at the science behind bacterial growth and temperature. This is a general graph of how bacteria grow over time. Focus on the left-hand side of this slide first. This part of the graph represents the time it takes for bacteria to realize when they're in a good situation, meaning they have food and the right temperature to grow and reproduce. This period of time is called the lag phase and is the first 2 to 3 hours bacteria realize they are in the temperature danger zone, which is actually good for them. They will start to wake up and grow very quickly. If they are in a food that was previously refrigerated, it will take a couple of hours or maybe an hour for them to start to wake up. Once they figure out how great it is, they will grow exponentially. We call this period of rapid growth the log phase. The stationary and death phases are when bacteria have eaten all the food that they can and essentially die off over time. We never get to this point when it comes to foodborne illness because bacteria can be growing in log phase for a very long time. When bacteria wake up, which is time 0 shown here, they're coming out of the lag phase. Once they start to grow, they're doubling their population every 15 to 20 minutes if the temperature is above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. 1 or 2 cells of something like Listeria over a 4-hour period can grow to 10 or even 100 times the starting amount of bacteria. Even with a little bit of contamination, there's always risk. A lot of contamination dramatically increases the risk of someone getting sick from any bacteria that may already be there. Temperature control is about keeping bacteria from growing until the point of potentially making somebody sick. Consider a food like a turkey or ham sandwich, which has a high protein content and lots of moisture. Bacteria like to grow and replicate in foods that have lots of protein and moisture. The food code calls these TCS, or time and temperature control for safety foods. One such bacteria, Clostridium perfringens, is a spore-forming bacteria. When exposed to the right conditions, spore-forming bacteria can move out of their spore, grow, and create toxins. Eating these toxins is like eating a poison and can make you very sick. The point of refrigeration is to slow the growth of bacteria, including spore formers. Listeria, for example, may take a week to grow from 1 cell to 10 cells, or 10 cells to 100 cells, whereas other pathogens such as E. coli 0157H7 cannot grow at all under refrigeration temperatures. The bacteria shown here are the ones we are worried about when it comes to food safety, field trips, and nutrition programs. We may see something called Staphylococcus aureus, which is a spore-forming bacteria often associated with dairy and uncooked, ready-to-eat TCS foods like salads, sandwiches, and cream-filled bakery products. It can grow in soft cheeses like feta and can grow quite well in the temperature danger zone. It can create a toxin within 2 to 4 hours that could make someone ill. E. coli and E. coli 0157H7 are associated with raw and undercooked meats, but also contaminated fruits and vegetables. Cut leafy greens is probably the best and most relevant example, and one that we would see most often. If E. coli is present on a leaf of lettuce, it can take 4 hours or more to grow to problematic levels. Salmonella is associated with raw and undercooked meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy, and contaminated fruits and vegetables. Listeria monocytogenes has been found in refrigerated, ready-to-eat foods like hot dogs and deli meats, as well as fruits, vegetables, dairy, and raw and undercooked meat, poultry, and seafood. It's even been found in hummus, as we saw earlier. Campylobacter jejuni is most often found in raw and undercooked poultry and dairy, but has also been found in raw and undercooked meats. Clostridium perfringens, as we discussed earlier, can be found in any high protein and high moisture food. Bacillus cereus is another spore-forming bacteria that is common in cooked rice and other cooked foods, like leftovers, sauces, and soups, that have not been cooled properly. Most of the pathogens important for food safety can be a problem when it comes to transported foods or field trips because a variety of foods are often involved. So what do we do? What do we need to keep cold? Any food that has moisture and protein will be an ideal environment to grow bacteria. Deli salads and meats such as turkey, ham, roast beef, and chicken and tuna salads are great examples. These types of foods will also grow spoilage bacteria, which include molds and fungi. Spoilage bacteria can cause sliminess and create off smells and bad taste. We worry about the same types of cut fruits and vegetables during food transport that we worry about in the kitchen. This includes anything that would be considered a TCS food, like foods you might put on a sandwich. Exceptions are whole fruit, shelf-stable cut fruit cups, and prepackaged applesauce. We don't have to worry about having these in the temperature danger zone. We most often see bacterial growth on cut fruits and vegetables. Dairy products will also grow foodborne pathogens if the pathogen is in the food and it is not at the right temperature. The only exception here is for ultra-high temperature UHT pasteurized shelf-stable milk. Remember, it is also essential to have a partnership with whoever is transporting these foods and to follow the correct protocols for handling and storing. Planning ahead is essential to safe food transport. There are many things to consider when planning food transport. One of the things you should know and highlight is weather conditions. Will it be hot or sunny? If so, what will be the best way to manage food safety? In a situation where it's warm or hot, we must make sure food is in a cooler and the cooler is kept closed. The length of the trip and the amount of food also matter. You will want to consider the resources you have for packing and transport. If the trip will be long, lunch may be consumed more than 4 hours after leaving, so it's important to have a cooler. It is also important to highlight food allergies and special needs for students. Have a conversation about any special dietary needs before the field trip. Again, we want to stress that handling food for field trips should be a partnership and that communication between partners is critical. As we just mentioned, find out about food allergies and special needs up front. It is essential to know about any dietary special needs ahead of time before food choices are made or anything is prepared. It can help to designate and know which students have certain food allergies so you can prepare for them. Foods will need to be prepared, packaged, and kept separate if someone does have an allergy. They will need to be handled to prevent cross-contact, which can contaminate non-allergen foods with allergens. It is critical to clearly mark bags and coolers that contain an allergen food. Not only does this help prevent cross-contact, as well as cross-contamination, but labeling also ensures that whoever is distributing the food knows who and where foods need to go. The first step to preparing food safely, as we know, is hand washing. We need to wash our hands before handling any food or food prep equipment. If someone were to get sick on a school field trip, the first thing we look at is the food, which ultimately is traced back to the school cafeteria kitchen. Use clean surfaces and equipment. Consider the environment and where food will be prepared or placed for service. In previous cases, food such as apples ended up on a park bench, which could have had bird poop on it. It is important to communicate the need to use cleaned and sanitized food contact surfaces to the leader of the field trip. They must be able to identify food contact surfaces and provide a barrier, like a plate or clean tablecloth. Finally, keep assembled and cut foods in tightly wrapped and sealed containers and refrigerate TCS foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below until ready to pack. You will also want to receive all cold perishables as follows in the HACCP plan at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Note the time the food was removed from refrigeration. This is usually when you start serving it. If food isn't held in a cooler, it needs labeling stating when it needs to be consumed or discarded by. This must be eaten or discarded by time should be within 4 hours of when it's removed from refrigeration. If it's a hot day above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, we especially want to make sure it's labeled. Before using them, you'll want to make sure portable food transportation units, or coolers, are cleaned and sanitized just like any other piece of equipment in the kitchen. If using a cooler, make sure the units are kept tightly closed until all meals are distributed, as it's the only way to make sure that they will maintain their temperature. Keep coolers away from the engine on the bus or direct sunlight. If food will not maintain a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below, use coolers with ice packs. Note that ice coolers are not the most practical way to take lunches. We prefer ice packs as there is less mess and potential for leaking. A lot of research has been done on coolers. Results have shown that placing food on ice or using cooler packs will keep its temperature, although cooler packs don't keep temperature as long. A full cooler with a layer of ice packs, food, then another layer of ice packs can keep the food temperature below 41 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 hours. Another benefit of using ice packs is that the ice won't leak or get into food as it melts. Ice packs can also be cleaned and sanitized. The concept of communication between partners is important here too. Make sure teachers, staff, and volunteers on the field trip understand which are the right types of equipment. To highlight again, tell whoever will be transporting the food to do their homework. They'll need to check if there are hand washing facilities and plan the time the food will be eaten so they can let you know. Make sure they understand the temperature danger zone, between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll want them to record the time that the meal was served, both when they plan on doing it and when it was consumed. Also have them check for special dietary needs so you can prepare, label, and store foods appropriately. Imagine you're a teacher taking kids on a field trip to a farm. You get to your destination and are ready to have lunch. Everyone finds a picnic bench, and the tendency is to jump in and start eating. This is an environment where there are foodborne pathogens from animal droppings on the floor, and children could be touching things that may have been contaminated. This would be an excellent time to wash hands. Luckily, there is a hand washing station outside the farm, which includes running water and soap. Remind teachers that everyone should wash their hands before distributing meals. Another important note about hand washing is that alcohol-based hand sanitizers are not a suitable substitute for hand washing. They don't do anything against norovirus whatsoever. They are also not very effective if hands are dirty. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer can be used after proper hand washing as an extra level of protection, but it is not a substitute. Recall the study we discussed on North Carolina's summer nutrition program. If ready-to-eat foods are going to be distributed and are not wrapped, they need to be handled using no bare hand contact. In other words, with gloves or utensils. Serving food without wrapping is not the best practice, so foods should be individually wrapped if possible. After meal times, ensure all leftover food is discarded. We don't want food to make it back onto the bus. Don't try to save leftovers. Hand washing also needs to happen after the meals. You may have other concerns about handling and transporting food for field trips. Have a conversation with the teacher about foods brought from home. Stress to the teacher that students should not share food due to potential food allergies. Remind them that they are responsible for managing food allergies. The key message we want you to take away from this module is that we are trying to limit bacterial growth. That is why we are controlling temperatures. It is unrealistic to think that all foods don't have bacteria. We have to assume that there is a pathogen and limit its growth. Planning and preparing for the field trip, which involves communicating with partners, is essential. Have that conversation with the teacher to prepare them for all areas of food safety, including eating on time, controlling the temperature, and discarding leftovers. Refer to your school's HACCP plan for more information regarding food temperatures and times. Feel free to contact Dr. Ben Chapman by email or phone if you have any questions. Thank you for viewing the module Field Trip and Food Transport, Do It Safely. We hope you will join us again for another module on school food safety.